So that was deep learning. What about wide learning? Wide learning refers to applying what I just said in deep learning, but in every aspect of life. So when it comes to language learning, your learning goal, my recommendation is your learning goal should be not just doing well on your exam or getting that job or being able to immigrate here, but to be able to live successfully in all of Western society, every area. Because my guess is that for many of you, your learning goal is limited towards school or work. And I totally understand your desire to succeed in school, have a good education. Some of you may go back after graduation, back to Asia for work. Or maybe you might continue your career here. You want to earn the money, you want to be able to settle down here. I understand that motivation. But I want to encourage you to expand your scope, your goal of success to every area of Western life. So basically, it simply means success in every part of life just means that you function as natural as you would in Chinese, in Mandarin, back in Asia, in all these other areas of friendship or in the restaurant and things like that. Because if you do this, if you apply wide learning, that is, you're able to internalize English for every part of Western society. The advantage is that you'll actually become even more successful in school and in your workplace. Because one of the reasons why many of you feel a disconnect when it comes to interactions outside of school and work, when you're having small talk with your coworkers, is because you don't feel as natural outside of talking about school or work topics because you haven't internalized English as a language in different settings, like more casually, like talking about family or food or traveling or movies or music and things like that. And so you're not able to talk about those topics with your coworkers or friends or classmates. So as a result, um, you don't build as close of a relationship in your workplace, and on a concrete level, it means that you are literally restricted in the amount of vocabulary you know outside of school and work. So I'm going to use myself again as an example. I have work experience as a Christian pastor in churches here in Greater Vancouver. And I remember when this was about 10 years ago, when I really first started to learn Chinese, Mandarin, I mean, Mandarin is my fourth language. I wanted to speak with the Mandarin speakers from Taiwan and China at my church. And when it came to topics about religion, because I'm a pastor, 如果是关于圣经、属灵生活、祷告这样子，okay, the religious topics, I understood what people were saying. When they were talking about the Bible, I understood it. And if I needed to talk about the Bible and Christian topics, I can communicate my opinion. The problem was when it came to every other topic, like news or hobbies or basketball or music, I couldn't catch up to what they were saying. Like even sometimes, like because I guess you would learn about household furniture, right? So for example, they would talk about like 柜子, 衣柜. I'm like, what is the 衣柜? Oh, and I had to look it up in the dictionary. They're talking about cabinets. Oh, they're talking about 装修, 在家里的装修. Okay, I get it. Talking about renovations. But I was lost. I didn't know what they were saying. And as a result, even for my work in the church, I was not able to effectively minister as effective as I could to the Mandarin speakers because there was a disconnect between me and them, right? I couldn't understand a lot of what they were saying. And they didn't feel fully comfortable talking with me about every part of their life in Mandarin. And so, for your English learning, if you primarily learn English in a classroom, or even if you took a course like 10-week business English course, you are limited in your vocabulary. And so, as a result, you may not know, even in your workplace, the exact things that your coworkers are talking about because every company and work culture is very different. But more than that, like I said, when you're having a casual conversation, what we call small talk, with your coworkers or your classmates, all these other topics, and the topics are endless because everyone's personality is different, their upbringing is different, their interests are different. Um, you have a disconnect, and so you're not able to connect as closely with your classmates and coworkers or teachers. And wide learning means aiming to learn vocabulary and phrases, English, in every aspect of life. And if you can do that, and if you can also communicate naturally, and you have a feel for the language in all those areas, then you actually have an advantage in school and in your workplace. And the reason is because your overall English level will be much higher than your peers. You're able to do your work much more efficiently because if you're coming to Canada or the States for school, you're literally able to do your readings much faster if your overall English level is better. And the way to improve your English is not to focus on um, the topic specific English, but to learn English all across your whole life, and then your overall English increases. And when you do that, you can literally read faster than everyone else. You can write your assignments faster than everyone else. Same thing for your workplace. You're able to read your work documents, complete a work report much faster, much more accurately, with less mistakes. You're able to communicate more clearly. You're going to have less language barriers. You're able to get your point across. You're able to understand the assignment that, let's say, your boss gave you much quicker, much more accurate. And to use a work example, because you can build that trust and that casual relationship with your coworkers, and especially with your manager or your boss, they'll like having you around, and it means that it will make your work environment more pleasant. It'll be a more happy place. People, you'll be able to laugh with them. You're happy to be with them, and your manager will be more understanding to your needs and requests as they come up. So, for example, let's say you need to take certain vacation days during, let's say, a busy work period. It's possible your manager might be more understanding and be like, "Go ahead, go for it," because you've built that relationship. Or your manager may consider you, because you have a good relationship, for an internal job transfer or a promotion. Or if you move on from that workplace and you find a job elsewhere, your manager can be a good job reference for you because you've built that relationship. I want to speak about one more advantage for why I recommend deep and wide learning. And I want to speak to those who start or want to start or already have raised a family here in the West, or raising a family here in the West. So you have children. And having worked in church ministry for over 10 years and having interacted with many, many Chinese families, I noticed a trend of many immigrant parents not being able to communicate with their children. Now, of course, in every generation, parents and children will always have a disconnect because of the age gap, the generation gap. But I find that the additional challenge for immigrants with their children, let's say their children are born in the United States, so they are called ABCs, American born Chinese, ABCs, or ARCs, American raised Chinese. There's a further disconnect between the immigrant parents and the children because of language gap and cultural gap. The children are Westernized. They think in English, they feel in English, but the parents have not fully internalized English as a language and the culture, the thinking, the feeling of the language and the culture behind the language. And so as a result, there's even greater disconnect between parents and children, especially as the children get older. So if you embrace the vision that I am proposing of deep and wide learning of English, you're able to think and feel in English, and you apply this widely in all areas of life here in the West, you increase your chance to be able to better communicate with your children. And it is a huge advantage. Perhaps in another video, I'm going to elaborate on exactly what I mean by that advantage of being able to raise your children and understand them better. But I want to end this video with some practical suggestions. What can you do with this information? First, I want to suggest change your mindset about learning English and broaden your mindset. I have a few reflection questions that you can think about. And the first question is to ask yourself, to what degree have I internalized English so that I think and feel in English? And I have 5 points in terms of a rating from 1 to 5. Okay. And one is being not very comfortable, and 5 being very, very comfortable. And so I'm just going to read it to you. Um, to what degree have you internalized English? Um, would you answer 1, I have lots of trouble communicating in English, and so I struggle even in a school or work environment? Or is it 2, I can communicate on a basic level within a school or work environment, but I'm often doing translation in my head? Or 3, I sometimes need to do translation in my head, but mostly I can communicate naturally in a school or work environment? Or is it 4, I feel quite comfortable thinking in English and can somewhat adapt to different social settings, even outside of school and work? Or is it 5, I have a good feel for English and can adapt to many social settings outside of school and work? And the purpose of this reflection question is, for many of you, it's probably not a 5, maybe not a 4, perhaps a 1, 2, or a 3. Now, then you become aware of where your level is. Then you can ask yourself, okay, which number do you want to get to? Which level? Is it a 4? Is it a 5? And now you know kind of the gap between where you're at and where you want to get to. Furthermore, how would you like to expand your goal in English learning? Like, which areas do you want to learn? So, for example, which social context in the West do you want to begin to work on? Is it casual conversation? Is it small talk? Is it talking about sports? Is it talking about how your children are doing? Because that's not business language. It's not business vocabulary. It's you may be talking to your coworkers, and you might have children similar age. Is it talking about how to raise your children? Which areas do you want to work on? And so that's where you can focus. That's where you can start thinking about how to learn in that area, being more intentional about learning that vocabulary or expressing yourself. And I guess a further question is what I said earlier about raising children is, if you have children or you want to raise children, the question is, what are my hopes for raising my children in the West in terms of communicating with them in English, understanding their Westernized mindset, raising them according to Western society, perhaps, according to the experiences they'll have when they're going to school here, when they're interacting with their friends here, when they are involved in the English social media, 社交媒体, okay, just a Nero. Okay, is it any of that? So think a little bit, and it will help you think through what exactly you want to learn, and that will help guide where you need to start. Another practical suggestion is, when you're thinking about this, is some of you might be thinking, wow, there's a lot to learn in English. You may have done really well, like I was explaining, in school and in work, but all the other areas, there's a lot to work on, and you feel overwhelmed. And I want to encourage you, don't feel overwhelmed. Keep on learning day after day. There's this very strange saying in English. I think it came from probably another cultural background, but it goes like this: How do you eat a whole elephant? A bite at a time. Okay, now I don't know where the saying came from, why anyone would eat elephants in the West, but the point of the saying, the wisdom behind it, is that when you're facing something enormous, like an elephant, an enormous task, the way to achieve it is to not worry about how big it is, but to do it a bit at a time, bit by bit, day by day. So, my encouragement to you is, don't feel overwhelmed. Figure out what you need to work on, and then write down what are specific things that you can work on in that area, and just apply it every day. And then over time, um, after a month, after 2 months, after 6 months, you'll begin to feel improvements. Other people actually will probably even say to you, "Wow, your English has improved so much. It sounds so much more natural." They'll encourage you. So don't worry about how far you're at, but only you think about it, you plan it, and then you work on it. Okay. And for practical suggestions for how to improve in your English, you can watch my other video on the immersion language learning method. But here I'll just mention two quick suggestions that you can easily do. And one is, if you are here in the West, you start off by listening carefully to other English speakers, and you imitate them, you copy them, you copy their expressions. I think that is probably the most easiest way to learn, because You don't need to read a book. You don't need to do more studying. You don't need to take a class. You just need to live your life and remember what your coworker or your friend said. So, for example, earlier when I was suggesting to my student, instead of saying handsome, because you would say shy in Mandarin, say awesome, cool, right? If you are a younger person, your classmates would be expressing excitement in their own way. You can copy them. And then later on, as you become more comfortable, when you feel English, you can develop your own expression. But in the beginning, you need to imitate. That's the first suggestion. Another one is to redeem your time. And that's actually how I improve on Mandarin. So while I'm driving, while I'm doing household chores, cleaning the house, cleaning the dishes, going for a jog, doing exercise, I'm listening to, in my case, Mandarin. In your case, it would be English, listening to English podcasts, English music, just maybe talking to people in English. In my other video, I mentioned using Clubhouse. I think Clubhouse is a great app to learn and listen to natural English. So listening, redeem the time. So you don't need to add more time to what you need to do. But while you're driving, if it's safe, of course, while you're doing your chores, you redeem that time. You can also redeem your time while you relax. So for your recreation, for example, me and my family, we watch a Mandarin TV show, and I put on English subtitles for my wife. But we all enjoy it. My daughter enjoys it. I enjoy it. My wife enjoys it, and at the same time, I'm learning Mandarin. So you can redeem your relaxation time, hopefully, to activities that where you can actually learn English. Another practical suggestion is to slow down. You need to slow down because what I was explaining earlier in learning to think in English and feel the language is you need to slow down. You need to give yourself time to every week think about one conversation that you had with a coworker or a friend and think about what they were sharing with you because you might be thinking, hmm, I didn't quite feel or understand fully what they said. You need to reflect on it. And perhaps it's in between your commute. You're driving home to and fro from school or work, right? And you're thinking about the last conversation and you're thinking, oh, what do they mean by that? You need to give yourself time rather to think about what they said, to feel what they're saying, to understand. And also you need to give yourself time to think about how you would express yourself in English in a way that you could feel the words. So, for example, you might think about a conversation and you thought, oh, for some reason there was misunderstanding because the other person said, can you repeat that? What did you mean by that? Or do you mean this and this? And you need to think about it and you need to think about, okay, next time, how will I express this in English a little bit more clearly? And you know what? For me, when I'm learning Mandarin, I actually practice by myself sometimes saying Mandarin phrases so that the next time I come across the same situation, I will say that in Mandarin. So in your case, do the same thing with English. You think about, okay, I'm going to say this next time in English just to express this with my friend. And then you practice. And the next time you'll actually be better. My final recommendation in what to do with this vision of deep and wide learning is to get a tutor who can coach you. Now, my suggestion is before you find an English tutor, you should think through and write down your goals. So, the reflection question I gave you earlier is to help you reflect on um, which area you want to begin learning. And then when you write down your goals and if you find a good tutor and you communicate this goal to your tutor should be able to adapt your learning to your goal. So I'll give myself as an example again. When I about a year and a half ago, when I invited a tutor to help me with my Chinese, I communicated to her that my goals were in Mandarin is one, I want to communicate about high level academic topics in Mandarin, and then second, I want to be able to read academic books and even the classics in Chinese, like 孙子兵法、论语这样子. And so, because I communicated that, my tutor was a really helpful tutor. She helped me and she suggested readings in that. She explained to me how to interpret certain texts so that I can understand better. She helped me to express my ideas better. Every time we talked, we would talk about really complicated topics like culture, for example. How does language relate to culture and things like that? And she would help me to say, okay, why don't you try saying these words? Maybe these are the vocabulary you can use instead. And so in that way, after 1 year with my tutor, I improved quite a bit, quite a lot actually, and I was actually able to save time over time because she was able to guide me in how to have wide and deep learning in a new language. So that's my suggestion for those that if you have the time and money to invest and you want to improve on your English and you have that period of time, you want to improve more quickly to hire a good tutor. There are many good tutors out there, and you need to do your research. Perhaps you need to have like a phone interview with them to share with them your needs. That's kind of what I did actually to find my tutor. Share with them your needs, and you got to get a sense of whether they're able to provide you with that service, that very personalized learning service. Uh, and if you're interested in my tutoring services, you can feel free to contact me with the contact information below. But other than that,大家要努力学习英语，加油啊！I'll see you next time.